And in terms of the agenda today, we want to start with a brief, I think, 101 on what the Canton Network is and why we think it's systemically important, and who's using it, and why, and some of the technology behind it. Then we'll talk about some news and developments on the network. There has been lots happening, and we'll cover that with Rajesh. Anton's going to be telling us a little bit about Talos and the work they're doing. And then we will move to the infomercial bit, where we will talk to you about what Launchnodes does on Canton in terms of enabling customers to be multi-tenant validator nodes, and how that works, and the difference between a full validator and a multi-tenant validator. And then we'll move to talk about the tokenomics of Canton, which I think is a really important part of the innovation of what Canton have done, and try and give an analogy that allows us to explore that, and then move to a Q&A. So kicking off the 101, why is Canton important? Well, Canton is the only public blockchain with institutional grade privacy. And why that's important is that it allows financial services workflows to come on chain in a way that hasn't been possible before. And it has been focused on financial institutions. And despite only being live for a short period of time on mainnet, the adoption patterns are significant and extraordinary. And it's built for compliance and privacy and this idea of legal finality. In terms of who's using it, well, in addition to some of these household financial institutions, there are 400 other institutions who aren't listed who are using it. And there are also companies like BP and Microsoft in other sectors who are leveraging this privacy first and institutional grade control to build and make it a network for more than simply finance. What is the Canton Network? The Canton Network is, as I've discussed, privacy enabling, but the enabling tool behind that and language behind that is DAML, and Canton have spent a number of years building that, and it's been built by some of the best brains in the business. And what it enables you to do is build applications with this application level control and data control that means institutions that couldn't use blockchain and build apps before are now able to. The engine of the Canton Network is this synchronizer, and this diagram is complicated but important, and there's a link here that I think someone will share in the chat that explains this in detail. There are incredible resources, and what the synchronizer architecture allows for is almost a network of networks expressed in applications where privacy and access is controlled, and so is data. What's been built on Canton so far? Big repo platforms, important fixed income platforms, and bridges and wallets, and all the kinds of things you might expect with a finance focused chain. But I think it's expanding, and it won't be finance focused exclusively forever. And we're already seeing healthcare applications. We're already seeing sports and entertainment applications. And again, going back to that idea of a systemically important layer one, I think we see that for the adoption of other industries and participants. So as I said earlier, the adoption rate, the statistics are impressive, terrifying. We're Brits, so we should try and avoid hyperbole, but they're really incredible. And one of the things here that I think is worth focusing on is this T+0 piece, because instant settlement has been a holy grail in financial services and banking for a long time. And Canton gives you that by default. And the savings and efficiencies that are created in that are enormous. And that's exciting for everyone who's involved right now, but everyone who's going to be involved and for what's being built in the future. That's the 101 over broadly. Momentum is building. The network is growing by all metrics. The number of validators, the number of new applications that are coming online, and the featured apps as well. And there is now an exchange listing, which hopefully Rajesh and Anton will talk a little bit more about. So that's that bit over. Rajesh, to news and developments in the network.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jaydeep, and thank you everyone for joining. I think we've got a good array of people from around the world. When we started doing this, we were a little bit concerned, will there be enough to talk about around news on the Canton Network? But one of the things that is very true is that every week there are some major progressions, new enterprises joining, new people becoming super validators, new products. So we're never short of news, actually, and the channels on LinkedIn and Twitter, etc., are always very buoyant with new activity. We talked about perpetuals listing last week on 4 exchanges, I believe, then, and this week we saw go live of Canton Coin listings on multiple different exchanges globally, and that's phenomenal. And not just because, not from a speculation perspective, but actually because it introduces Canton Coin to a whole range of other people who wouldn't necessarily have known about it or been able to access it before. And it also provides an off-ramp for folks who are kind of on the network already. So we've seen a lot of interest in Canton Coin since the listings. People are kind of asking, what is this network all about? It's been described as the biggest blockchain network you've never heard of because it's been in stealth mode for so long, and then in the last year it's absolutely flourished. So we as a technology company don't speculate on price or anything else. We know that the view is that it's kind of undervalued, but we're just grateful that there's more exposure and more access to Canton Coin, because it means a lot more venues and a lot more individuals and businesses can get involved in Canton Coin, which is phenomenal. A few other things have moved forward this week. So Jay mentioned Talos, and we're very fortunate to have Anton here today. Talos was announced this week as the latest super validator on the Canton Network, and I'll share a little bit more later on around what super validators are all about and their role in the network. But that's, we're always very pleased to see new super validators coming on board with different infrastructure and different utility that they've brought to Canton. The other big news story from a couple of days ago was Franklin Templeton's digital assets platform called Benji connecting and integrating with Canton. So Benji has something like $900 million worth of tokenized assets. It's now accessible and tradable from Canton. So again, all of these bridges, all of these integrations mean more and more utility, more and more scope for interesting use cases and interesting trading opportunities for folks within the Canton ecosystem. And last week, if you were on the call, we featured a couple of applications which we thought were pretty interesting. This week, there have been 14 featured apps which have just been told, you've been waiting around for a while to be approved. Why don't you have kind of probationary featured app status? And we'd love to see you on mainnet and see your applications in use. So a couple that we've picked out are Zorro Wallet, and we've seen loads of questions around how do we get a wallet on Canton. Loop isn't seemingly issuing out invitations at the moment. Should we use a Bron wallet? And there's a rich kind of ecosystem now of different wallets available. Canton Bot is another one that caught our eye. So it's essentially a Canton Coin faucet, which means if you're developing on Canton and you want some test Canton Coin, you can go to the faucet and say, give me some Canton Coin that I can use in my testing processes, which is useful. And then the final one we wanted to touch on was Handle Pay. So this is a pretty interesting application where if you've got a social media account, like a WhatsApp account, you can send Canton Coin payments to other people purely using their WhatsApp details. So avoiding the traditional pretty laggy interfaces of having to add in a long address for a wallet or other things. Handle Pay is kind of designed to take the pain away from that. So again, lots happening. We're just seeing a continuous kind of news feed coming through of new partnerships, new bridges, new integrations, which is phenomenal. And if you look at other L1s like Ethereum or Solana, yes, things change all the time and there are new things happening, but we haven't seen anything like the frenzy of activity and great progress that we're seeing in Canton at the moment. The final piece really isn't specifically about CC Boost, but this was an application which went live last weekend, and the premise is if you send 2 Canton Coin to CC Boost, it will send you back 4 Canton Coin. If you send it 4 Canton Coin, it would send you back 8 Canton Coin. So a pretty compelling application, almost a victim of its own success. So word got out on Twitter, on Telegram and Twitter, people wanted to get involved, traffic's absolutely spiked, and the developers had to take it down just because it was so popular and so heavy on the network. And it's led to, in addition to other applications that have preceded it, a lot of conversations around how do Canton reward activities on the network, and what types of applications should get special status, and what types of applications should get rewards for transactions. So, and I see a message in the chat saying you still can't sign up on CC Boost. You absolutely can't. They've kind of taken it down for now. So we're seeing a lot of interesting debate about how should app developers be rewarded on Canton, and that drives, you know, the economics of the whole network. And I'll touch on some of this a bit later on, where I try and explain why Canton's very different from Bitcoin and Solana when it comes to kind of network economics and tokenomics. Let me hand back to you, Jaydeep, and hopefully we can get Anton on screen and on mic to chat.
Anton, are you there?
I'm here. Hey guys.
Fantastic. Thank you, Anton, for joining. First off, I suppose it would be great to get a little bit about your background, Anton, and how you joined Talos.
Sure. Yeah. And thanks for having me. Super excited to be here. It's funny, the slide you flashed with the users of Canton Coin Network, 2 of those are my ex-employers. So start off my career in TradFi, as a lot of people here did. I was at Deutsche Bank for about 13 years and then moved on to JP Morgan, and then made a switch over to crypto in 2022 or so. So fairly late in the cycle. Started working at a small cryptocurrency broker as a product manager on trading, and then have since been at Talos for about 3 years. So that's essentially my journey. I'm a product manager at Talos, focusing mainly on post-trade and DeFi, and has been fortunate enough to work and launch our Supervalidator on the Canton Network.
Great. Well, that leads into my second question, which is that many people here today won't necessarily know about what Talos does for institutions. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So Talos is the sales pitch is we're a digital asset trading platform, but I think that's a little bit outdated because we do so much more than that. So Talos started in 2018 as essentially an OAMS. So the idea was to help institutional clients trade in a more effective manner. Right. So at that point, liquidity was very scattered. Obviously, you had different prices, and you still do today. Not just there's less disconnect now. But back then, there's so many liquidity providers, all streaming different prices. And Talos's goal was to normalize all of that for our clients and allow them to more effectively get liquidity from the market. Over the years, we've sort of we've added on the end caps of that equation. So now we power the full end-to-end cycle of digital asset trading. So now we have a pre-trade product, so allowing clients to determine what they should trade. Obviously, our execution layer is still the bread and butter of Talos. We have connectivity to 90 plus venues, and these are exchanges, LPs, custodians, DeFi even. So again, we are still very focused on actually allowing clients to get liquidity from the markets. And then we have a very strong post-trade offering now, which I cover, and I lead that vertical. But that's essentially allowing clients to manage their assets and manage the operational and portfolio levels once the trade has actually been made. So again, in my mind, I sort of split it between pre-trade, trade execution, and then post-trade. And then Talos is across all of those. And over the summer, we acquired a company called Coinmetrics, which gave us, that was the last missing piece to our equation, and that's data. So now we have, on-chain data, and yeah, I think at this point, we're sort of the full end-to-end solution for institutions to engage with.
And Anton, could you tell us a little bit about Talos's view on why Canton's important and what you're doing on it? And also, yeah, I overused the word systemically important, but I'd be really interested in your view on that in terms of Canton.
Yeah, I was doing a lot of nodding on the previous slides off camera, obviously, but I'll throw in a couple of use cases there. And our first engagement with Canton was actually in the spring. I still remember getting a call with Eric and Masha. Right. Shout out to Masha, by the way, fellow Eastern European and Eastern European food lover as well. So I remember it was a very short call, but I think the two use cases that Eric gave me really resonated, and it's almost like one of those mythical light bulb moments where it's like, yes, we should be doing this. And it's really the privacy aspect of it, right? And I think you've touched on it already, but a very simple use case that I could think of is, and that Eric brought up, is imagine you wanted to pay your employees in stablecoin, right? It's a very, very simple use case. There's no way to do that today without everybody seeing how much everybody else is making, right? There's such a simple thing that you cannot achieve on the existing rails, right, pre-Canton. And the second portion, again, that's really exciting to us is the settlement. So again, Talos, powers interactions between institutions, and settlement by far is a bilateral activity, meaning that we trade with each other and then we have to settle with each other, right? There is no concept of a centralized clearing DTCC like as you would in TradFi markets. So those settlement transfers, again, are currently very public. And if you really wanted to, and I'm sure there's places that do this, you can actually gauge sort of the settlement flows between the various counterparties. And that information, obviously, is not something that you want out there, because that could allow interested parties to understand your trading volumes. They can gauge your revenues from that. They can understand what your trading strategies are based on the assets that you're settling as well. So a lot of that stuff that's public should really not be public, and is not public in TradFi markets. So again, I'm stealing a quote from Eric, but in this case, the transparency of blockchain is almost a bug and not a feature. And Canton addresses part of that.
Yeah, we all steal quotes from Eric. That's for don't about that. And then what are your clients' views on Canton and their adoption patterns, to whatever extent you can talk about it?
Yeah, so largely across across two verticals again, and our Supervalidator application really focused on two things, and that's unlocking the liquidity of the Canton Coin itself, which again I'm happy to talk to, and the second piece, which is a little longer term, that's the settlement aspect that I spoke about. So our institutional clients are hyper focused on both of those things, right? So our goal with the Supervalidator application was to essentially say we will help grow the adoption of the network through increased liquidity of Canton Coin, which we did support, through the listings process that happened 2 weeks ago on Perps, and then this week on Spot. And then going forward, and this is something we're piloting now with a couple of our clients, they absolutely have the appetite to move their public settlements into a private sort of chain. So I think both of those verticals are extremely interesting for our institutional clients. And I mentioned this before, but Talos is a purely institutional platform. We have over 200 plus clients, but these are blue chip names that are not, small mom and pop shops. We're dealing with some of the largest institutional clients in the world.
Yeah, and I think that sort of answers my next question, which is that how is Talos helping institutions to adopt Canton? They're what you're describing sounds like they're almost crying out for it, if that's not strong.
Yeah, definitely. So definitely on the liquidity front, it was from our perspective, we were preparing for the listing. Obviously, from a tech perspective, we were trying to get all our internal ducks in a row, making sure that we can support it once it goes live. We had no idea. Obviously, this is private information on when the listings would actually happen. The funniest thing to me is that we've had inbounds from our clients asking us, when is this happening? Have you heard anything? So there was definitely sort of appetite and this pressure that was building up in our clients, where they were expecting us to list the coin as soon as it's available. And we are, again, I can't speak to the volumes, obviously, but we've had the spot listing on Monday, and we've seen some very healthy volumes. I checked this morning. I was honestly surprised at how much our clients have traded.
Nice. That's and I suppose on my final question on a personal note. So how's it been? Behind the scenes supporting the go live of Canton Coin across exchanges.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is BAU. I mean, obviously Talos being sort of in the center of between all the various counterparties, like we are sort of used to this. But it was still kind of interesting because there was a specific deliverable that we had to meet as part of our Supervalidator application. So I'll tell hopefully a funny story. Monday morning, we were sort of ready to go. We were monitoring when the exchanges would actually launch the network, and we were all prepared. We've obviously been preparing for this for a couple of weeks. And my CTO comes over to me and he's like, "Are we ready?" I'm like, "Yes, we're ready." And he's like, "Okay, how long do we have after the coin launches to actually list it per our commitment as a super validator?" So I tell him it's 5, and he's like, "Okay, 5, we could do it." And I'm saying it's 5 business days. That's what's in our application. And he just looks at me. He's like, 5 business days? I thought it was 5 minutes. So that just sort of shows you sort of the standard of Talos, and what we're sort of the delivery at which we're used to operating. So he had this in his mind. He had this full understanding that we would support Canton within 5 minutes on launch. I'm happy to say that it was actually much quicker than that. I think as soon as it launched across 4 different exchanges, our clients were immediately able to trade it within less than a minute. So yeah.
There's one thing that you've touched on a couple of times and I haven't picked up on, but could you talk a little bit about what it means to be a super validator on Canton and what that means for Talos and how that works?
Yeah, so super validators, I think there's a lot of different paths to becoming super validator, and there's a lot of different values that each super validator brings, right? The Coin Metrics, which is the company that we acquired, they actually have They brought their own super validator, so they were a super validator on Canton before acquisition, and they really deliver value through data. So they actually have released a Canton Intelligent application over the summer. I'm not sure if it's a featured app or not, but they have been really essentially providing the value to the network in that way. For us, as a trading shop primarily, the 2 verticals we're primarily exploring and through which we aim to provide the data is increased adoption of Canton Coin as a sort of liquidity and as a token, and then as I mentioned, facilitating a lot of those settlement activities that our clients are currently doing. We want to move them to Canton, right? And we want to work with our clients and build tools that they need for them to actually settle on Canton versus bilaterally as they do today. That's essentially, again, that's the main 2 ways in which Talos is looking to add value.
Anton, thank you very, very much for that. Real pleasure to have you here today. And the financial institutions, you probably know most of them already, and most of them are in touch with you already. But if there are people on the call who want to understand more about Talos, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, so talos.com, very easy. Contact us in the top right corner. I'm on Telegram as well, at Anton Desh. So yeah, feel free to reach out. Fantastic.
Thank you, Anton.
Thanks for having me.
And Rajesh, now back to you.
Fantastic. Thanks, JD, and thanks again, Anton. It's really good to have had you on the webinar. A quick kind of infomercial from Launchnodes in terms of what we're doing on the Canton Network. If you're not aware of Launchnodes, we are a profitable global node and applications business. We've been around almost coming up to kind of 6 years now. We are a Canton Foundation member, and we are approved to offer white label nodes and multi-tenant nodes to our customers. We've operated thousands of blockchain nodes globally for the past 5 years. And one of the things we've done from the outset is look at new ways of funding social impact through things like Ethereum staking. So we are working with Lido, we're working with Aave, and you can effectively lock your Ethereum and earn a yield, or lock your stable coins and earn a yield. And we've partnered with, or we're working with, UNHCR, UNICEF, Give Directly, Mercy Corps Ventures, some of the leading global NGOs, governments, to help drive social change at scale. And so anyone interested in contacting us about that, we're always very interested in talking. A lot of people are aware of full validator nodes on Canton, and those validators are there verifying transactions, writing them to the ledger. But a lot of people aren't necessarily so aware of this second option, which are multi-tenant nodes. And I'd like to talk a little bit about that in a second. So really, as Launchnodes on Canton, we do three things. We provide full validator nodes for customers. So if you want to have a Talos node, say, we don't operate nodes with Talos, but any entity, we can run a full node for you. Equally, we can give you space on one of our nodes as a multi-tenant. And then thirdly, we have a pretty unique labs concept where we build Canton apps quickly, efficiently, and can deploy them to mainnet in a very condensed timeline. So we've got great YAML developers, we've built apps ourselves, and that's increasingly becoming a larger part of our business. So go back to multi-tenant versus full node. I think most people think the full node is absolutely what they have to be on the Canton network and to participate in it. And Canton a while ago thought, let's actually have a simpler version where people can not have to run a full node, which is costly, and you've got to keep it running 24/7 and manage it and do version control. Why not allow people to share a node and split the costs and still maintain that security and still have people siloed from a data and applications perspective? So we kind of embraced that model as well. And right now, some people will be aware, but you can't actually go live with a mainnet node, a full validator node, because there's a cap in place. Digital Asset told us yesterday that there is no timeline for that situation changing, unfortunately. I'm sure it will change at some point soon. Canton Network is very keen to get more and more participants on board, and there are a lot of applications which will require full nodes. But in the meantime, if you want to earn Anton Coin rewards, or you want to participate in the network and use applications, multi-tenant is a great alternative to that. And you don't get the full rewards that you would with a full node, but you do get a large proportion of those rewards. And also, come January, the validator rewards diminish somewhat, so you get closer to parity. There won't be such a big difference between running a full node and a multi-tenant node. So as I say, multi-tenant is available now. We're signing up customers on a daily basis at the moment, which is great. And the application rewards are pretty healthy. So all of our customers really are more than covering their costs with us through the application rewards. When would you want to have a full node, in particular if you have written your own application that you want to go live with? Some folks are saying to us, can we have a multi-tenant node as a stepping stone, and when full nodes are available, we'll switch to that. And that's absolutely a kind of roadmap that we'll work with customers on. But the reason for that is if you've got an application and you need to connect to weather stations or sports data feeds or other things, you don't really want to be doing that on a box that you're sharing with other people, because you want full control over every aspect. So again, the rewards picture and the ROI around both of these models is changeable and very changing all the time. But in general, we're finding that customers are having a great time running and participating on the Canton network from an ROI perspective. We're a safe pair of hands, essentially, and we're very much back in Canton and believe in its future. It's a phenomenal network, and the ecosystem is great as well. One of the questions we get a lot is, how can running a node be so lucrative? Where are all the coins coming from? If we run a node, I don't understand what we have to do to run a node. There are lots and lots of questions about the economics of Canton, and people are asking us, is it a magic money tree? Where CC Boost, for example, how can they give you twice as much money that you send to them? So what we wanted to do was give you a really simple perspective on how Canton economics work. And this may work or it may not. This is the first time we're trying it. But essentially, if you imagine 10 years ago, five gentlemen got together and thought, we are going to build the best fun fair that's ever existed. There have been other fun fairs, and the investors got in early and they made a lot of money, and they left, and the fun fair went to rack and ruin over time. We want a fun fair where users are attracted to the venue, there's lots to do, and everyone gets rewarded for playing their parts. And those five guys realized that there are different types of people that you need to involve and engage and reward. And some of those are the builders, so the guys laying the pipe work and the electric cables and putting in wastage pipes and everything else, through to the helpers, the guys providing security and ticketing and first aid, through to the rides. So no one's going to come to your fairground if there isn't a carousel and a Ferris wheel and a water slide. So making sure that there are good rides there as well is pretty crucial. And no fun fair is going to survive if there aren't visitors. So making sure that the visitors want to come and are incentivized to come is also pretty useful. And they decided to create a magical coin that they were going to use to reward all these people. And that's the precise analogy to the Canton Network. So Supervalidators, and Anton touched on this, are essentially the builders of the network. Big infrastructure plays, integrations, bridges, making sure that the core network itself is there and available, and all of the kind of plumbing and infrastructure is in place. Then you can be a validator, and you can run your own node, and those nodes perform a useful function as well. And they're equivalent to the helpers who are providing the first aid and everything else. They make the fun fair run day to day. And then the apps in this model are equivalent to rides. So if you come along and you decide you're going to build the best Ferris wheel in the world, then you should be rewarded for doing that, because you're bringing visitors to the fun fair. And if you're a user, you're a visitor, again, you want to get some benefit out of the fun fair as well. So this is kind of how we conceptually see the Canton world. We're not saying it's a game or a light-hearted thing, but actually, this is the model that it's very simple for our teams to kind of understand and explain. And it's very different to how other blockchains operate, where generally it's the infrastructure guys who get paid. And this is the crucial bit as well. And there's been a lot of confusion this week about, is there a supply cap on Canton Coin? There's talk about Canton Coin will only ever have 100 billion Canton Coin minted, which is true, but it's not like Bitcoin where you have 21 million coins and that's it. There's a kind of equilibrium process, the burn mint equilibrium, which happens. And that essentially means that somewhere on this fairground, there's a machine which every time you take a ride and you have a token for taking that ride, it gets burnt by this burn and mint machine. But at the same time, every 10 minutes, new tokens are being printed and are available. And if the fun fair's in use and it's a hot sunny day and everyone piles into the fun fair, those tokens are going to be in high demand and their value is going to increase. But at the same time, if it's a rainy, cold winter day and no one's at the fun fair, the tokens, the value of the tokens falls significantly because no one's using the rides. So making sure that use and appeal are kind of balanced out is the job of this burn and mint machine, and causing network health, bringing about network health essentially. So that, in essence, is a very whistle-stop tour of how Canton does tokenomics. And just to kind of bring it back to the picture of other layer ones, if you operate on the Ethereum blockchain, virtually all of the rewards go to the folks who provide the validators. So if you write an application, and Eric's used the example of Aave before, if you write some of the most successful applications on Ethereum or on Solana that exist, the only way you can get rewarded up front or through the process is typically through grants, which are hard to come by, that a bunch of guys sit in a room and decide whether an idea is good or not. Whereas Canton makes it much more democratic, because they're effectively saying, yes, people who provide the plumbing and the lights and everything else need to be rewarded, but actually a lot of the utility comes from the apps. So we want to disproportionately award app builders rewards, basically, which is where if you run a node and you run a whole bunch of apps and make those available, then you can earn decent rewards on the Canton network. So again, apologies for the very simplistic analogy for Canton tokenomics, but hopefully it kind of helps explain the differences between Canton and other things. There are a whole raft of great resources. I'm not going to drill into them. I'm just going to flash them on screen. The Canton Foundation's website has been revamped. It looks great. Go and have a look at that. Canton Network. There are some great podcasts around at the moment, including Melvis's podcast, State of the Ecosystem, and some with founders of Digital Asset, Don Wilson, Yuval, and others. So by all means, go check those out. And if you're a builder or you want to know more about smart contracts and DAML code, which is the language JD mentioned earlier, there are some great hackathons, ideathons, other things happening with some real prizes. So prize pool of around $20,000 for this next phase. So again, you can find all this stuff online on the social channels and on the websites. One final plug from us. I know a lot of people in our community are going to DevConnect this weekend or beyond. We are co-hosting an event with Sensei Node talking about Canton. So it's kind of Canton side event. It's at the Polo House in Buenos Aires. I think this weekend. We can give you more details on that. So if you are going and you'd like to meet some folks from Digital Asset, I believe that Jacob, who runs partnerships at Digital Asset, is going to be leading a panel there. Reach out to us and we can give you the Luma link, and we'd love to see you there. I think that's largely it, other than questions. We've got about 15 minutes for questions if people have any. I'm just going to open the chat. Before the first question we had right at the start of the call, a lot of people will have missed it, is what is Kantara? Do you want to take that, JD, or do you want me to pick that up?
No, I'm happy to take that. So Kantara is software that makes it easy for validators to subscribe to applications. So the model that Rajesh sort of explained in the tokenomics piece plays out whereby you, as a multi-tenant node or as a full validator, can subscribe to applications. But when I subscribe to Netflix, I pay them some money and I get movies. I don't get 400 Netflix coin back. But as Rajesh explained, the tokenomics model is that the user and the application are rewarded. And so your ability to subscribe to these applications is a function of how much you earn. So Kantara makes it easy to subscribe to these applications as a full validator and as a multi-tenant validator. And so you will be essentially subscribing to the application, you pay your subscription fee, and then they will produce an offer for you, which you accept, and then you're A-OK to use that application, and your node in whichever form starts earning rewards. And
then a question from Nicholas around what's the benefit of having more validators running their app? Do you want to take that as well, JD?
Yeah, happy to. So if you've got more validators running your application, you're going, again, back to Rajesh's analogy, you're creating utility on the network, more useful transactions. So the benefit isn't necessarily for the DAML app developer, it's for the application that's been built. If it has more validators running it, then it has more people accessing it, and therefore more economic returns for that application.
Feel free, if you've got any other questions, drop them in the chat. In the meantime, JD, you were on the tokenomics call this week. You're engaged with a lot of the application developers in this ecosystem. What's your take on changes to the tokenomics and rewards mechanisms for Canton. What's your view on healthiness or concerns or anything like that?
I think that it's a really, an amazing achievement where Canton is right now. And I think that the idea that there are debates on what constitutes good activity, it's good that they've started early, because I think they'll continue, and I think that they'll have to be resolved through the community and through the participants of the network, and that's, I think, something that we're seeing already, and there have been solutions offered to people who take a kind of a different view to what CC Boost are doing in terms of good activity, but I think that it isn't a case that there's a fixed activity, that there will always be edge cases, and this network's evolving. So I don't know if that's a dodge to the answer, Rajesh, but I think that's my take on it.
Perfect. Kevin's asking in the chat, can you share examples of apps you've built? I think it'd be useful if you pinpoint a couple that we've done on Ethereum, but then talk about the ones we're allowed to talk about on Canton. Yeah,
sure. So in terms of what we've built with Lido is Lido impact staking. And so we have integrated with Lido to enable you to share a percentage of your staking return to UNICEF, UNHCR, Mercy Court Ventures, and a whole bunch of other organizations to fund their work, which is rich in impact data, which they make available to almost market what they're doing and ask people for their rewards. In that mechanism, it isn't a blanket case of almost taking return goes to UNICEF or UNHCR or Mercy Court Ventures. You can donate 1% or 99% or anything in between and keep some of the yield yourself. And we think that this is important in terms of the sustainability. In terms of just pure app building, the really interesting part of Lido impact staking is the idea of the user interface being really, really simple, and modeling to Lidos. And the same thing we're launching with Aave and using stable coins to fund school connectivity through UNICEF's Giga project, working with the GSR Foundation, who are putting the initial capital on. It's easy, it's intuitive. And I think what we are excited about in terms of building on Canton is creating that same compelling user interface that makes things easy and compelling and rewarding. The idea that you bring applications on, the users rewarded as well as the app provider, I think is a profoundly interesting model, and solves a whole bunch of problems that sit way outside of blockchain at the moment.
And just to add to that, you didn't mention, I think you mentioned.
Sorry, yeah, and then the point in terms of what we're building on Canton, some of the apps that Launchnodes are building themselves and are sort of progressing to mainnet when full validator are available again, are applications that allow you to discover price on Canton more easily, and to use Canton Coin and earn yield. So there's some of the things, and then some of the stuff we're building for clients we can't really talk about, unfortunately.
Let me jump to our contact details. So we're on Telegram as well. JDP is EdRock. I'm Rajesh Sinha Global. But anything at all, feel free to email us at canton@launchnodes.com and happily share more information or point you at resources as well. It's not all about trying to sell you stuff. If you wanted to know more information or anything, it's a super friendly ecosystem, and I'm sure there are folks that will help you alongside us.
And one of the things that we'd love feedback on, or your ideas on, is explaining the tokenomics piece and using the analogies to do it, because we get a lot of questions on it. It sits at the heart of why Canton's so impressive, and we think it's really important that it's made digestible and easy to understand for everybody without having a deep understanding of the network.
We will have a similar webinar next week, and we're very fortunate to have Melvis, who heads up the Canton Foundation, joining us on the 28th. So we've got a whole lot of questions for him around direction of travel for Canton, what the Canton Foundation is doing, last week we mentioned that the Canton Foundation had invested effectively in Tharimmune, which is a kind of biotech company with a $540 million placement with them. There's a lot that we'd love to know more about, including how can retail and individuals get more involved in Canton. There's a lot of encouragement for building on the network and learning about how to deploy your own applications, but there seems to be a big push, especially in the Telegram group, for people to get involved in the Canton network that aren't financial services. And I'd love to hear more about that from Melvis. I'm sure he'll fill us in. How does one go about buying CC? Are there bridges from ETH? Do you want to pick that one up, Jake, or do you want me to cover that?
CC is available on multiple different sexes right now and exchanges already, but there's also, and he's listed Kraken and Bybit and a number of others. Yeah. So sorry if you've missed your exchange or your preferred buying route, but there are lots now.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are increasingly bridges as well. So I'm pretty sure that Chainlink has tested a bridge from Ethereum to Canton. There is a range of other folks looking at the same thing, from Wormhole and other major suppliers, major kind of bridge entities. We had the question earlier about what smart contracts have we built. We've built a bridge from Canton to Lido V2 and kind of tested it. A lot of so there's a lot of kind of development around bridging to DeFi apps and DeFi yield effectively. And how does one become a multi-tenant validator? So super straightforward, essentially. If you email us at this address, we can share more details. But essentially, we have a very straightforward onboarding process, a KYB process to make sure we have your details and you've gone through our Know Your Business process. And then it's as simple as we set you up on our node, we give you your credentials, you can subscribe to applications and we can help you do that, and off you go. And we do all the technical stuff basically, so it's very straightforward and hands-off. Unlike, we've been offering Ethereum nodes for 6 years, and as a solo staker, you absolutely have to do some maintenance, version control, updates. That's not the case. We take all of that away for our customers who are multi-tenant customers. So it's very straightforward. Email us is a simplest way, and we can share more details.
We have 5 minutes, and I'd love to give that back to everybody, to thank everybody for attending today. Thank you again to Anton. It's great to see so many people on this call. We'll continue to do it and try and make the content interesting and useful. Thank you very much, and have a lovely weekend, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend. Cheers.